If you could only pick one metric to track to measure the success of your startup, almost always this one metric is just sales. And that's why today we're going to be talking about how to assess the health of your sales pipeline so that you can really drill down on your most important North Star metric, which is sales and revenue. So without further ado, let's dive on right in. Hi everyone, my name is Shuo Chen. I am a former founder, now investing in founders and teaching founders at Berkeley and Stanford. I've had the fortune of investing in over 100 pre-seed stage startups and seeing dozens of them get successfully acquired and go public on the NASDAQ and NYSE. And today I want to share some of the most successful patterns we've seen in terms of how these startups go about assessing their own sales pipeline health so that hopefully you, all the founders out there, can learn from these lessons and use that on the startup that you're building now. I'm also one of the board members here at DECODE, the largest founder community co-hosted across Berkeley and Stanford. And we, of course, see a number of students as well as alumni in our community who are actively building startups day in and day out. And so these are some of our top answered questions around how to really assess your sales pipeline. One very quick announcement right before we get into the 3 tactics is that the DECODE annual conference is back. If you want to learn from intimate roundtables with some of our best speakers across successful founders, investors, and industry operators, please make sure that you apply to our invite-only roundtable discussions as well as dinners through the link hyperlinked below and join us at the conference in person. We would love to finally meet you in person after all this time. So without further ado, let's dive on right into the 3 tactics for today for assessing sales pipeline health. Starting with tactic number 1, if you want to assess the health of your entire sales pipeline, you have to start by taking a step back, which is just thinking about sales as a systematic process. You want to make sure that you design a process from input, process, all the way to output. And pipeline kind of describes this whole process. So tactic 1 is all about checking the pipeline size and quality. If you want to make sure that you have a robust process, you have to make sure that, of course, first of all, it's large enough to even have just a strong enough pipeline to end with the ultimate enough sales and revenue that you're looking for, and that you want to make sure this is high quality so things don't leak out. So tactic 1 is all around just checking pipeline size and quality. So how do you go about doing this? Well, there's a couple of different metrics, but typically there are 2 super important metrics to track. So you want to start by tracking these 2 key metrics. 1 is the number of new opportunities that are entering the pipeline, and 2 is the net new dollars that these new opportunities are adding each month. So what comes out of the pipeline. Basically, these 2 most important key metrics are what's coming in and what's coming out. What's coming in is the number of new opportunities entering the pipeline and the net new dollars that these new opportunities are actually adding in terms of the ultimate sales and revenue. You generally want to evaluate if the opportunities are coming in align with your ideal customer profile. We did an entire separate video on that that's hyperlinked, so make sure you check that out. And you want to make sure that non-ICPs, just if they don't fit your ideal customer profile description, any of these that don't fit, they tend to really just take up your time and resources. You spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources on these people who are never your ideal customer profiles to begin with. They'll go down the pipeline and realize, hey, this is not meant for me, but have spent your time as a founder, your team's time as perhaps sales agents, and then end by not actually buying. So just if you think about it this way, you want to make sure that your pipeline is large enough, but also focused enough that you're not attracting a lot of these non-ideal customer profile targets that come in. So make sure that you get rid of that huge consumption of time and resources. Generally speaking, a very healthy pipeline will show growth in the kind of fit you have coming in. So remember, we were talking about not just tracking metrics for the size, but also tracking for quality. So if you see a growth in people who fit your ideal customer profile really well, that is a good sign. That's a very good sign that you have a quality pipeline. So generally, this healthy pipeline shows the growth in your ICP fit leads. You have more and more leads that actually really fit your ideal customer profile, and you actually see a reduction in leads that don't fit your ideal customer profile. It means whatever you're doing to attract all the leads into this pipeline, you're doing it correctly to only bring in ICP fits and get rid of non-ICP fits. And generally speaking, even if your non-ICP fits, even if it's a very, very small portion of your overall pipeline, that's still money and resources and time that you don't want to waste. So make sure that you're tracking for this. So overall size, you want to track number of new opportunities as well, net new dollars that these new opportunities are adding. That's for tracking the size. And tracking for quality is just percentage of people who are or are not a good fit for your product in terms of your ideal customer profile. And that brings us into tactic number 2, which is all around tracking deal velocity and just the health of each stage in the pipeline. So how do you do that? Well, you want to think about how quickly, in what direction your deals are coming in at. You want to check, is this progressing in a healthy manner along each step of the way within the pipeline? So there's a couple things you want to check for. First of all, you want to compare how long deals are moving through each stage, compared to an average deal of a similar type. For example, for a deal size of $1 million, are they taking around the same amount of time as your other existing deals of that size? Or compared to another ideal customer that has fit your ICP, your ideal customer profile, are they taking around the same amount of time? Compared to another customer who is looking for the specific same product features in terms of their priorities, are they taking the same amount of time? So this is where you really want to make comparable comparisons to understand how long deals are moving through each stage to an average deal of that comparable characteristic. You can specifically ask questions like, well, how long has the deal been at this current stage compared to the average I'm seeing? Or is the closing date appropriate for where the deal is in the sales process? And generally speaking, there are multiple stages. We actually have a separate video that talks about what are the different stages in your sales pipeline, so please make sure to check that out as well. And during this process, you want to make sure that you're checking for consistency in the pace of these leads as well. So you want to have ideal customer profiles and leads for who might be a customer coming in. And any inconsistency in the pace, like sometimes you get a lot of customers who are a really good fit for your ideal customer profile, sometimes you don't. That inconsistency indicates that there is a sales process issue or that there's a personnel issue, so that it's not leading to consistency. Consistency means that you have the same or similar amount of leads coming in at the same frequency of time. So every week I'm able to bring in a dozen leads. That's just one specific example. So if you are spotting any inconsistency, make sure you diagnose what the underlying issue is. Is there something that is inconsistent about your top of funnel sales process? Or is there some inconsistency in terms of which salesperson is bringing in these leads? Again, there's a separate video talking about different stages in this pipeline, just thinking through where to get a lead, how to qualify a lead, and all of the steps of the way. So make sure you check out that other video if you haven't seen it. And as you're analyzing your deal velocity and how healthy they are progressing across each stage, you want to make sure to look for deals that are propelled by urgency and by qualified buyers. Again, we actually have another video just talking about how urgency and qualification is super important, but you want to make sure that these are not just qualified buyers, but that they also have an urgent need for your product. Generally speaking, unqualified prospects and uncommitted decision makers, they all just end up stalling deals. And if you end up with one of these deals that are just getting stalled, you want to flag these deals. Flag these as stagnant deals where neither the sales team nor the buyer is really actively engaged. So this is where you want to point out, well, is it that our sales team isn't following up actively? Or is it that the buyer just isn't that engaged? And you want to diagnose what the underlying issue is, and then you want to flag that for immediate action to either revive the conversation or just close it all out together. So if it's a sales team that isn't following up quickly enough, you want to have a system for flagging these stagnant deals where you had conversations, they're progressing through the stages, but they're somehow getting stuck and it's not spitting out final revenue. And you want to make sure the sales team goes out there proactively and take immediate action to revive that conversation. Or if you feel like, hey, we have enough feedback from the buyer, they're just not engaged, they're just not going to move forward, and we can't really figure out why, or they just don't have enough incentive, not enough urgency, or they're just not the best fit for the product, then you perhaps want to mark that as closed out so you don't have to spend any more resources on that. So in this whole process, you're tracking for deal velocity, like is there enough speed? Are they going in the right direction? And you're checking for, is it healthy along every stage of the sales process? And this all then leads us into tactic number 3, which is you want to evaluate the shape of this sales pipeline. Generally speaking, a healthy pipeline is a funnel where it's very wide at the top and steadily narrows through each of the stages that you're bringing your customers through, and it really narrows towards ultimately what comes out at the bottom of the funnel, their closed deals, aka bottom line, or revenue, top line, and of course, after expenses and profit, that's bottom line. So healthy pipeline is you bring in all the potential sales targets, you qualify them, you bring in through each of the stages of the sales funnel, and it spits out into direct revenue. Generally speaking, if that is not the shape of your funnel, and by the way, you could do this very easily using a lot of the tools out there, but if you want to figure out specifically which tools to use, we'll hyperlink that down below for you as well. But you can visualize what this looks like how many are stuck in which stage, or how many of them are progressing through which stage. That'll tell you whether or not this is funneling at the right conversion rates from one stage to another. If you're seeing bloat in the middle or bottom stages, this is typically a sales leadership problem. That means that you have a really wide top of funnel. People are coming in, you're qualifying these sales, but somehow they're getting stuck in the middle or somehow getting stuck at the bottom. This is where instead of narrowing down, it's actually very bloated. This is a sales leadership problem because at the middle stage, if it's getting stuck, it means that your sales team isn't being disciplined enough in following up and in qualifying these leads. So they go from just leads and kind of sit in the middle and never really get fully qualified and don't have enough of a follow-up. So if you're seeing a bulge in the middle stage, make sure that you enforce a very disciplined follow-up process and a qualification process so that you push people through the process. And if somehow you're getting a lot of these people stuck at the bottom stage where you see a big swell at the bottom instead of narrowing down, this is where you want to check for real budget. Do you really have the right budget on the customer side dedicated for solving this problem? Do you have a great internal sponsor who's ideally an executive at your potential buyer's company? And you want to figure out, why is it that we brought them all the way through the funnel? They have a clear need, but we just can't turn this into revenue. That's typically a question for your sales team to really proactively reach out and figure out whether or not they have the right sponsor from the customer side and whether or not they have real budget so that you can remove these roadblocks actively. And regardless of what kind of issues you're seeing throughout this whole process. And by the way, the last thing I should mention is that you could have a top of funnel bulge. That's typically fine because the top of the funnel is supposed to be big, but you want to make sure that you have enough people helping you bring that top of stage and qualifying these leads. And by the way, if you haven't watched our sales qualification video, just as a general rule of thumb, qualification just means making sure that these are a good fit for your actual product. You want to make sure it's a good fit for them and it's also a good fit for you. Do they have the right budget to buy your product? Do they have the right structure to implement your product? Just making sure that they're a good fit for the product or service that you're trying to sell. So if you notice issues throughout the funnel, we talked about top of funnel, we talked about middle stage bulge, bottom stage bulge, you generally can do a couple things by cleaning up your pipeline. And you can do so by asking a couple of very specific questions. For example, you can ask, what specific actions are expected from the customer and by when? Well, that will tell you very clearly when to follow up from a sales perspective. So if these are the three specific actions you expect from the customer and you need them to take within the week, then make sure that your sales team has a process that always within that week, the customer gets a follow-up from you to make sure that they've done the actions they said they're going to. And if you don't have a very clear action, then clearly this deal isn't being actively managed by your sales team. This is when it's a team management problem. If you do have a clear answer for this and this deal is somehow still stalling, again, it's a sales team leadership problem where clearly this is not being done by the right people or the right leads aren't being assigned to the right people on the team. Another specific question you can ask to help you clean the pipeline is, well, is this still a qualified opportunity? Like, have I made sure there's really a good fit for this? If it is a qualified opportunity, well, what is being done to get this deal unstuck? What is the immediate next action step? And who will take that action step? So if it's stuck somewhere, you want to make sure, why is it stuck? What is the next action and who is going to do it? Once you have that clarity, then you can really help move the deal forward instead of it just being stuck in the pipeline. So again, when it comes to anything being stuck, you want to force decisive action. So typically there's only a finite number of choices you can make if something is being stuck. The decisive actions tend to be one of three options. One is you disqualify the opportunity to say, hey, it's not a good fit for the customer, not a good fit for us. Forget this. We're going to remove them from the pipeline. Or option two is you move this opportunity back up the pipeline and reduce the probability of this deal closing to say, hey, maybe we need to do more qualification, or maybe we need to do something else. Option three is you move this deal opportunity out of the active pipeline altogether until a tangible customer action is really being taken to be done. And this tangible customer action could be, hey, I want the customer to initiate the conversation. There are some products where you, as a seller, should be initiating the conversation, but there could be opportunities where you say, hey, I really need the customer to take an action so that we can move things forward because I need the customer to integrate this database before we can figure out whether or not they're the right fit for this solution. So whatever it is, define this tangible customer action, and until that happens, this deal is no longer in the active pipeline. So generally, I hope that these are very specific, tangible steps that you can take to just help you progress things forward. And I want to recap what the 3 tactics are. So the 3 tactics we talked about today. Tactic 1 is to check your pipeline size and check for quality. 2 is making sure that you're tracking deal velocity and health of each stage in the pipeline. And tactic 3 is evaluating the shape of your pipeline so that it's in a really healthy place. Specifically, you want to make sure it actually looks like a funnel. If anything is getting stuck, you can figure out what is getting stuck and why, and what action steps to take from there from a finite number of choices. So with that, if you want to learn about other potential traps that you might fall into in this process, or just tools that you can leverage in this process, we'll hyperlink our entire newsletter below so you can check out all the details, hyperlinked below. And of course, if you found this video helpful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And of course, share this video with other fellow founders in the community that might find this information helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we're excited to hear from you. We have been really putting together not only our weekly videos, but our weekly newsletters based on the feedback of all of you out there, and we really appreciate your feedback. So if you have a specific question you want us to answer in a future session, or if you have a follow-up question to one of the videos that we had already done, don't forget to leave it in the comments below, or just reach out to us directly either on LinkedIn or on email, and we're usually very, very quick at responding, and we make sure that we will put together a future video to answer your questions. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you at next week's session. Take care. Bye.